Northeast. Rain for Northern Ireland, pushing into northwest England, north and west Wales, much of the Midlands, southern England, eastern England. Dry for most of the day. It will cloud over after some sunshine this morning. Eventually a bit of patchy rain drifting into the Midlands. The temperatures in the south double figures, so higher than yesterday, but it is still windy, so not feeling all that mild. And the colder air is spreading back in this afternoon to northern Scotland. So some sunny spells, but the showers will get going here. Snow showers, and they could cause some problems as they continue into Sunday. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, a couple of centimetres even at low levels, more than that on some of the hills, so certainly some of the higher routes that could cause some disruption. For England and Wales, we're going to see the rain pushing south overnight. It could be quite heavy, but it will make for a very mild night here, whereas the colder air spreads back into northern England and Northern Ireland. Some sunny spells here tomorrow, but there will be showers, wintry showers, but the heaviest snow continuing in those showers over northern and western Scotland, where that warning remains in place. A wet start tomorrow in the south. The rain may tend to peter out, and we should see some brighter spells developing, certainly across England and Wales during tomorrow afternoon, with just a few showers scattered about. Rain may well return to the southwest, however. Again, temperatures in the south double figures, further north cold, but everywhere will feel colder because it's going to stay windy. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is Saturday Selection here on GB News with Esther McVeigh and Philip Davis. Coming up, we're discussing the damage being done to our children by constant COVID testing. DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson joins us after more trouble this week over the Northern Ireland Protocol, and Dr Liam Fox explains why he's backing a groundbreaking bill for people with Down syndrome. Plus, a former Eurovision winner explains what he would do if he ruled the world. All that and more after the news headlines.
Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. A former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was schools minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. Writing in the Daily Telegraph this morning, Mr Gibb says his constituents are furious about the double standards. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the Online Safety Bill, firms are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added, including revenge porn. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon to ruin people's lives. In the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the results of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr. Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory. During a speech in Florida, Mr. Pence directly challenged his former boss's assertion that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office.
President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
The government has launched a public competition to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history. The winner will be announced this summer. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Saturday Selection.
This is the Saturday Selection with me, Esther McVeigh.
And me, Philip Davis. Shortly, we'll be speaking to a concerned father and a professor of public health to discuss what, if any, are the children to do with constant COVID testing. Should we end it?
But we start, as we always do, with a look at the big news stories of the week. And, of course, we want to know what you think. So email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. With us in the studio is Frank McKenna, the founder of Downtown in Business, an organisation which helps to connect businesses together. And, Frank, it's been a concerning week for business and consumers alike. So what has caught your eyes this week?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, some bad news for business, and on the back of the past 2 years, not really the sort of messaging from the government that we wanted to see. Disappointed and surprised that earlier this week, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister confirmed that the national insurance increase that had been planned, 1.25%, will happen from April. And it's a perfect storm for business, Esther, because what we're seeing is people now having to pay back those bounce-back loans that came in during the pandemic. You've then got pressure on wages and wage inflation. You've got increases in other parts of the economy. And all of a sudden, we're having to face a 1.25% national insurance increase as well.
And we couldn't agree with you more on that. As you know, we say sort of, Conservatives, we wouldn't be wanting to introduce any tax increases. And I think we were alone in voting against them.
We did. I mean, it's not just for businesses either. It's the employees as well. And
Absolutely.
we've got an issue where, where the government are trying to help people with their energy bills on the one hand, and then in April they're going to be taking the money back off them in national insurance contributions.
And the point is, Philip, that you've got a situation here where, that 1.25% might not sound a lot when you say it quickly, but for me, a small business, that's times 20. And George Osborne, you will remember, described this as a tax on jobs when Gordon Brown tried to introduce a similar tax back in, I think it was 2012. He's absolutely right, because the impact it has on business is it makes us look at our bottom line and it says, well, whereas I may have employed 2-3 additional people this year, I'm going to have to cut my cloth accordingly. And so it's a massive hit to business, and I don't think people appreciate quite how much. You're right, Philip, the individual will feel it in their pockets as well. But for businesses, as I say, when it's times 20, 30, or with bigger businesses even more, That's a huge cost to us at the wrong time.
Absolutely, it's worth 12 billion a year, so it's a lot of money, isn't it? They're saying it, it would cost small businesses on average about £3,000 a year. So you're right.
Of course, the Chancellor says, well, look, we've had to spend £400 billion during the pandemic, and so we've got to pay for it. Got to pay for it somehow. We've got to pay for the backlog in the NHS. We've got to pay for social care. So, I mean, how would you propose he did that instead?
I think, we'd have more sympathy for that if they hadn't wasted north of £8 billion on PPE, to be honest. But, that aside, we are where we are, and so you have to look at alternatives. For me, driving the economy forward, getting people to employ more staff in order to then drive the economy, drive taxes up, because there's more of us paying those taxes. Get business to be in a position where they can be successful again, where they can invest. Research and development, enterprise grants. Let's start seeing a Conservative government. You know my politics, guys. But let's start seeing a Conservative government be Conservative. I think we've got one of the most business-unfriendly governments that we've seen for a long, long time. We get taxed more now than we have for 70 years. You've got a tax on businesses in terms of the culture that's trying to be introduced and basically forced upon us, which we may be able to talk about a little later on. And as I say, you've got this perfect storm where the Chancellors give us with one hand in terms of these bounce back loans. We're now having to pay those back. And now we've got a national insurance increase as well. Not to mention energy costs, which again, I think we're going to talk about a little later too.
What caught your eye this week?
Well, I think it flows quite neatly, actually, from Frank's story there. And although it's about a lady called Munira Mirza, who, as we've seen, it hasn't been a good week for Boris. You've seen more and more people leaving from his inner circle. And she's known as Boris's brains, this lady. So it all sounds disastrous that she is leaving. However, when you look a little bit more into Munira there, I mean, she said she left because of the inappropriate and partisan language that Boris Johnson used when he spoke to Keir about Jimmy Savile there and a lack of contrition. But I'm looking at her and she is a policy advisor for Boris Johnson. Now, many of us would have said she should have gone a couple of years ago because the policies she is pursuing are just not Tory at all. So we've got, as you mentioned, the highest taxes ever, which we'd say is a socialist government. She's done lockdown, state intervention. Again, we'd say that is a socialist government and arbitrary rules, statist rules during lockdown. So again, I'd say a statist government. So I'm going to use the words of Alice in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. And when you look at Munira, Boris's brains, she actually used to be a member of the Revolutionary Communist Party. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it's good news for Boris that she has gone, because in all honesty, she's taken us away from our conservative sort of ways, ideology and views, which goes exactly to what you're saying, Frank. We're off course. So I'd say for Boris, at the end of the week, it might have sounded like bad news, but actually it's good news. If that was his brains, he needs a new set and he needs a Conservative set.
See, in Liverpool in the 80s, you had militant. Conservative Party today, Revolutionary Communist Party. Couldn't make it up, could you, really?
I mean, I think I didn't know that about this particular advisor. I actually felt sorry for her. And I thought, imagine being Boris's brain. How tough must that be? But I think also, the points that you make, Esther, are legitimate, of course, and that big state intervention has surprised me in terms of a Conservative government implementing.
Because you'd be more of a Blairite, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Liverpool in the 80s. Michael Heseltine was a key player in regenerating that city. And I think that, lots of people it doesn't matter what your political colour is, admire the fact that Heseltine and that government got behind Liverpool in a very positive way during that time. But equally, if you look at what's happening in Downing Street at the moment, and we're talking about some big issues here, and we've got international crises, we've got a cost of living squeeze, and yet we keep getting bogged down in trivial issues to an extent, but issues that people out there care about, because, of course, we've all had our freedoms stunted over the past 2 years. And it's the one rule for them issue. It's not the fact that, was he ambushed by a cake? Did he have a pint on his birthday? It's not about those issues. It's about, as I say, that one rule for them. Yeah. And so any advisors that were close to him, it's not the Jimmy Savile remark.
And the reason
she's been there for all of that period.
And the reason that is so huge, that one rule for them and one rule for us, I mean, I always would say, you know, to me, socialism, there's an inbuilt hypocrisy in it past a certain point. You know, they say, oh, your kids can't go to private schools, but mine can. So I became a Conservative because of the lack of hypocrisy, because of those freedoms and choices. So that one rule for them and one rule for us is very damaging, and that cannot happen.
Well, talking about lockdowns and restrictions and things, the thing that caught my eye this week was the Johns Hopkins University carrying out analysis from a number of independent studies into whether lockdowns save lives or not. And they concluded that there was no clear link at all between the severity of lockdowns and the number of deaths in the spring of 2020. They reckoned it reduced deaths by 0.2%, and stay-at-home orders reduced deaths by 2.9%, and it couldn't find any clear evidence that any government intervention had made any difference at all. Now, I should say it's not difficult to pick holes in this study. I should say that to start with. But the thing that I thought was interesting about it is I think we're now going to have this thing where people who are anti-lockdown are going to come out with all this research to show that lockdown made absolutely no difference at all. And I'm almost certain that there's going to be some pro-lockdown fanatics out there who are going to produce a load of research saying how much difference it made. And I suspect we probably won't get much further forward at all in the debate.
I mean, this never-ending stalemate.
People will believe what they want to believe. But the point, I think the one thing that I would say is I think everybody throughout, whether you're a fan of lockdowns, I mean, I voted against all these restrictions and lockdowns, so, you know, I was against them throughout. But wherever you are, I think people have underestimated the impact that voluntary measures could have taken. I mean, we saw this at Christmas when the government didn't introduce any stringent, you know, by law restrictions, but said to people, look, we think you ought to take a bit of care, and people made lots of sensible decisions. And, you know, as a Conservative, I've always believed that individuals make better decisions for themselves and their families and their communities than the state makes for them. And I do think that we would have made, you know, lots of people would have made these decisions for themselves anyway without having to force people to do things. And perhaps if the government had gone down that road, Boris wouldn't be in the situation he's in now by not doing, as Esther said, things that he was telling other people to do.
It's incredible when you adopt common sense approach to things. And so I think that where we've got to in this debate, you're quite right, Philip, there'll be people who are screaming at the television screen now saying, of course we had to lock down. There'll be others saying we should have just been allowed to get on and do whatever we wanted. And somewhere in between, I guess, is the answer to that. You know, if you were vulnerable, if you had underlying health issues, if you were one of those people who genuinely were at risk of death or serious illness from COVID, I think we should, as a state, have supported those people and done what we could to put in place issues, situations where we could actually support them. And I think during that first lockdown, there was an awful lot of, again, sympathy for the government because, of course, we didn't really know what we were dealing with. But as this thing has gone on, and as the scientists and the sage advice has gone from more scaremongering to, you know, let's face it, it was a death wish at some times. I mean, in October, when this new variant arrived, we had public health officials in cities saying we should lock down again. Now, we've come through that Omicron variant relatively unscathed. And again, I'm not underestimating the people that were impacted by it, but let's have a common sense approach to this moving forward and a more balanced debate, a mature debate.
OK, well, I'm going to go to a totally different story now, a totally different one. I saw this during the week. It made me smile. And it is the question I'm going to ask you two chaps this question. Why should women have to shave our legs just to please men? So that was the debate then. Frank, why should we? And do you expect us to?
Frank, I think I can say in all sincerity, I can't recall Esther ever doing anything just to please me, to be perfectly honest. So, I mean, I was quite intrigued by that headline as well, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, listen, I've got to plead the fifth to an extent, but I've got to say that equally, my wife Victoria certainly wouldn't do anything to simply please me. And there's, I won't say that she does this, But there is laser treatment now, so people have gone
I'm
beyond
horrified.
shaving.
I'm horrified, Frank. You even know these things, unless it's you lasering your legs and under your arms. Look, Frank, stay with us. You'll be back later on. And obviously, you represent the voice of cities like Liverpool and Manchester, Newcastle and London and the business groups there. So we're speaking to you a little bit later on. But coming up, is it time to reconsider the mass testing of children for coronavirus? Don't go anywhere.
Good morning. A windy weekend and for some a wet weekend too. And in places a wintry weekend with snow likely to continue on and off across Scotland today and tomorrow. These weather fronts are slowly trickling southwards, bringing clouds and outbreaks of rain, isobars close together, so it is blustery and it will stay that way throughout Sunday also. But back to today, and that wet weather moving into Scotland does have some snow mixed in, mostly over hills, but some for a time to low levels across the northeast. Rain for Northern Ireland, pushing into northwest England, north and west Wales, much of the Midlands, southern England, eastern England. Dry for most of the day. It will cloud over after some sunshine this morning. Eventually a bit of patchy rain drifting into the Midlands. The temperatures in the south double figures, so higher than yesterday, but it is still windy, so not feeling all that mild. And the colder air is spreading back in this afternoon to northern Scotland. So some sunny spells, but the showers will get going here. Snow showers, and they could cause some problems as they continue into Sunday. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, a couple of centimetres even at low levels, more than that on some of the hills, so certainly some of the higher routes that could cause some disruption. For England and Wales, we're going to see the rain pushing south overnight. It could be quite heavy, but it will make for a very mild night here, whereas the colder air spreads back into northern England and Northern Ireland. Some sunny spells here tomorrow, but there will be showers, wintry showers, but the heaviest snow continuing in those showers over northern and western Scotland, where that warning remains in place. A wet start tomorrow in the south. The rain may tend to peter out, and we should see some brighter spells developing, certainly across England and Wales during tomorrow afternoon, with just a few showers scattered about. Rain may well return to the southwest, however. Again, temperatures in the south double figures, further north cold, but everywhere will feel colder because it's going to stay windy. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
your views have been coming in thick and fast, and I've got Helen Pritchard here on money. To raise extra money that the government need for social care, NHS and levelling up, why doesn't the government raise VAT by 0.5%? Everybody pays and it's a fair option.
And Don Borman says, Esther for Prime Minister, please. A championship fighter for the UK. So, Esther, if a contest comes up, are you throwing your hat in the ring with? Do you want to reveal exclusively? Are you?
Well, now that I've got Don behind me, I might change my mind. Ooh, cagey there, a cagey fighter. We've got Yvonne Jarman here on inflation. £5 million a day for illegals contributing nothing has to be paid for, which is really the main reason for inflation. So other people saying, where can you get the money from? Who we're paying for, and should they be contributing to the cost of living here?
And Marilyn Livesey says, I think this is on Boris. I think his wife Carrie is running the show in Downing Street, and Boris is in thrall to her. She should leave Boris to run the country.
Well, do you know what? There is a bombshell in today's papers, front page of the Mail, and it says Tory peers bombshell book says Carrie is to blame for all the chaos at Number 10. She is the person calling the shots. So, parents are becoming increasingly concerned about the damage being done, particularly to primary school children, by constant COVID testing.
With Omicron cases continuing to fall, is it time to rethink mass testing? Is testing in schools and workplaces still necessary in the way it was earlier in the pandemic?
Shortly, we'll be speaking to Professor Alison Pollock, a clinical professor of public health at Newcastle University. But first, let's bring in Dan Wallace. Dan, you're a father. What effect have you noticed on your children through the best part of 2 years of school closures and mass testing?
Yeah, and for us, we've got 2 kids in nursery, so just over a 2-year-old and just over a 10-month-old. And so for us, it's nurseries, and my brother's got kids in primary school as well. So for us, what I've noticed is essentially a large amount of distress for our daughter when testing. And I really feel for nurseries because there's no real great guidance for them either. We kind of have to test the way we would an adult whenever they've got 38-degree temperature or cough, and nursery feel the pain as much as we do because of the amount they care for the children. And what we've noticed is we've tested Bonnie 9 times in just over 11 months. To be able to put her back into nursery, obviously. And she's been negative every time, but around the 6th or 7th time, things started to take a bit of a turn. She really started to show signs of distress on the way to the test centre. And actually, she wriggled that much for me trying to restrain her that I ended up giving her quite a bad nosebleed. And I thought that was bad. And then the 9th time, on the way to the test centre, as we approach, not even test centre in sight, we're at the traffic lights, Bonnie starts going, no, 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 and getting really upset. And then when we get to the car park, she's already screaming. She's already in distress. I'm having to hold on to her and try and calm her down, but there's just nothing you can do. And during that testing process, the reason I find it so concerning is many parents will know this, and I've done my own research, and I find around between 1 and 4 is the problem area for ages that really struggle with testing. Is you have to essentially restrain your child. Let me add a bit to that, and I don't really like thinking about it. It's wrapping your legs around your child and pretty much putting them in a headlock to be able to get the test done, which is obviously not what we would expect adults to do. And I'm sure if adults had to be tested that way, we wouldn't be testing in this way. And essentially what led to this time was she got that traumatic and that distressed that just after the test, she vomited twice. And she was negative, right? So she wasn't ill, but she did have a spike in temperature, probably teething, as kids do between those ages very regularly. And I found it really, really distressing and just decided I needed to kind of get my voice out there. Their petition has started recently, but yeah, for me, it's more, there has to be a better way to test these children if we have to test them. And better still, what does the data say really about effect on children and how much we need to keep testing?
Dan, thank you there for explaining clearly but quite distressingly, what you've got to do and what your daughter is going through. So let me bring in Professor Alison Pollock. She's a clinical professor of public health at Newcastle University. Thanks for joining us. And we've gone past the point of, the key point of the pandemic now, where mass testing in schools and wider society helps to control coronavirus. Do we need to do this? And are other children suffering like Dan's children?
Yes, you're quite right, Esther. We should never really have introduced mass testing in the first place for children because it's never been properly evaluated and we have no evidence that it actually stops transmission. And as you rightly say, as Dan has said, these are the healthy children you're testing. So the first thing you should understand is that these tests were developed to be part of a clinical diagnosis administered under the care of medical doctors. They were never developed for mass testing for the reasons why they're being used, and certainly not for parents to have to drive their healthy children or children with mild symptoms to test centres. So this is utterly wrong and it's utterly unethical because testing is screening, which is very different from making a clinical diagnosis of a child who is seriously sick and needs to be tested. As Dan has explained, all tests do harm. So there can be nosebleeds, there can be psychological harm, but of course you've also got the risks of false positives. So children and their parents and their school bubbles are isolating unnecessarily, and also false negatives where you get false reassurance. And these tests have never been shown, despite the billions of pounds it's spent, up to £30 billion over 2 years, they've never been shown to actually have reduced transmission. And this is coming from the government's own Public Accounts Committee. So we do need to stop mass testing right away, and it should stop now for all children. And testing should only be part of a clinical diagnosis under the supervision of a health professional and as part of a clinical diagnosis. The other thing we need to really understand is that COVID was very different early on, when it was hitting a population that had no immunity. Now the population has a lot of immunity. We've had huge amounts of infection, 10 to 12 million cases in the last 3 weeks alone, with nothing like the hospital admissions. The ICU admissions are right down, and they're lower than in the flu season now for all pneumonias. So we've got to remember that. We're now at a different phase of the pandemic, and we're seeing a lot of mild reinfection, which is continuing to preserve population immunity. So this is very much transitioning to be very much like a coronavirus or the other cold viruses, or in some bad seasons like flu viruses. Now, we don't know the direction we're going on, but it's looking very, we're looking cautiously optimistic of where things are going. And that's another reason why we should be stopping mass testing, because now we're going to be seeing a lot of mild reinfection. Reinfections tend to be mild, people tend to be asymptomatic, it's not serious, and of course there is no then reason to be isolating people and to be doing the contact tracing on the scale that has been done. We should be keeping testing for clinical diagnosis and for targeting special vulnerable groups and properly evaluating it and getting good scientific evidence that it works.
Alison, has the blame for all this been with the government guidance and what the government have asked schools and nurseries to do? Or have schools and nurseries been sort of gold-plating this guidance and doing more than even the government have asked them to do?
Yes, I mean, the problem is the guidance is completely voluntary, but nurseries and schools have sometimes over-interpreted the guidance, and parents haven't been aware that they're over-interpreting it. And it's now really up to parents and carers and actually the schools themselves to say, look, this is only guidance. There's no evidence it stops transmission. It's creating a lot of harm, a lot of unnecessary anxiety, a lot of unnecessary isolation and closures as well. And now it's time to stop mass testing. It really is time that we stopped it. It's an unevaluated, unevidenced procedure in healthy children, and we're doing a huge amount of damage, as we've heard from Dan, both short-term and long-term, because there'll be long-term scarring. And we really, if children start to be very frightened of tests or going near test centres, then that's going to have a long-term psychological trauma for them as well. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen.
I think lots of people would think that children have probably been some of the worst victims of COVID and lockdown in particular, in the sense that we've heard from Dan about the effect on his daughter of all this testing and on a regular basis, but also what's been the impact of the other interventions, school closures, for example, mask wearing in schools. What do you assess as being the impact of those on the long-term impact on children?
Well, we won't know the long-term impact, but we're already getting very good evidence around obesity, around mental health harms, around psychological distress, and of course, a loss of schooling. If school closures were necessary in the early part, perhaps, but actually they went on for far too long, and we didn't consider the long-term harms for children. And indeed, we really big questions around that second round of school closures. What really needs to happen is that instead of spending billions on mass testing that doesn't work, and even on vaccines for children, which are big COVID vaccines, we should be putting our attention into rebuilding school capacity, bringing more teachers in, expanding the space, and really concentrating on their education and their needs, and also not forgetting all the other childhood vaccines where there's a drop in uptake, and we're really concerned about those. And they are really effective. It's really important children have their ordinary childhood vaccines, but the jury is very much out on the real benefits of COVID vaccines in young children,
Alison Pollock, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, and also Dan Wallace as well. So thank you both for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been another tumultuous week in Northern Ireland, with Minister of Agriculture Edward Poots ordering a stop on border checks on goods coming in from the rest of the UK, the High Court putting a stop to that order, and the resignation of First Minister Paul Givan.
We can speak now to the leader of the DUP, which of course shares power in Northern Ireland with Sinn Féin. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson joins us. Geoffrey, why did your party choose this week to take the action that it has?
Well, good morning, Esther and Philip. We've been working with the government now for some time on trying to address the problems and the difficulties created by the Northern Ireland Protocol for businesses and consumers in Northern Ireland, the so-called Irish Sea border. When the people of the United Kingdom voted for Brexit, they voted for the whole of the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. But as a result of the protocol, Northern Ireland has been left behind in the EU single market for goods. And this is creating enormous difficulties for our businesses here, given that we purchase 4 times more goods from Great Britain than we do from the whole of the EU combined. And the Irish Sea border is gradually separating us from the rest of the UK. Now, the government has the power under Article 16 of the protocol, where that protocol has created economic difficulty, political instability and societal problems, to intervene and to take unilateral action to restore Northern Ireland's place within the UK internal market. Indeed, the government promised to do so in the New Decade New Approach Agreement, which was the basis for the restoration of our power-sharing government in Northern Ireland back at the beginning of 2020. So over 2 years later, Esther, we've had no action from the government, despite publishing a command paper last July, over 6 months ago, committing to resolve these issues. Since October, they've been engaged in negotiations with the EU. The Prime Minister told me at the Conservative Party conference those negotiations would be short and sharp, lasting perhaps 3 weeks. Over 3 months later, no progress has been made. So enough is enough. I felt that in order to protect Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, I had to take decisive action to send a very clear message to the Prime Minister and to the EU that we are not going to accept this separation from the rest of our own country, that we are not going to accept a border in the middle of the United Kingdom, that this runs contrary to the principle of consent that is at the heart of the Good Friday Agreement. And so, with weeks left before the Assembly election, I want to see decisive action now. I want that action to take place before the election, so that we go into that election and that the people of Northern Ireland have their say, and that we are able to restore our political institutions that have been so badly undermined by this protocol.
Jeffrey, I think lots of people will agree with you, the unacceptability of goods not being able to be transferred freely from one part of the United Kingdom to another. And we even heard rumours that the government had not gone ahead with a cut to VAT on domestic fuel simply because it wouldn't have applied in Northern Ireland because of the deal that had been agreed with the EU. So I guess the fundamental question is, if the government doesn't renegotiate this protocol, what are the implications for the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland's place in it? I mean, is this going to put the United Kingdom itself at risk if nothing's done?
I'm afraid it is, Philip. This is an existential threat to the Union. And why do I say that? Well, Northern Ireland has been part of the United Kingdom now for over 200 years. The Acts of Union, which are the foundation stone of our union with Great Britain, in Article 6 of that Act of Union, it states clearly, there shall be no barriers to trade within the United Kingdom. That is a fundamental right that the British citizens of Northern Ireland have enjoyed for over 200 years. And yet, we no longer enjoy that right. We do not have unfettered access to our own market within the United Kingdom. There are restrictions on the movement of goods. Many of my constituents are unable to buy goods from suppliers in Great Britain that they could purchase over a year ago before this protocol was brought in. It's no longer available to them. Many companies in Great Britain are saying we no longer supply to Northern Ireland. So over time, our economy will reorientate away from Great Britain, away from the United Kingdom, towards the European Union. We will be engulfed by the EU single market, and that will, I'm afraid, lead to the real potential of Northern Ireland being separated from the UK and leaving the Union. If that happens, Philip, I do not need to remind you that if one part of the UK goes, what happens in Scotland? Is there not a knock-on effect here? Now, the Prime Minister appointed himself, and we welcomed this, as the Minister for the Union in the government. And I am saying to the Prime Minister, and I recognise there are many challenges that he has at the moment, but if this were, and I think of some of his predecessors, even people like John Major, when there was a crisis of this nature in Northern Ireland, they were on the first plane to Belfast. They were there on the ground. They talked to the parties. They sought to resolve these issues. We need the Prime Minister's attention now. We need him focused on getting a solution. And if the EU are not prepared to take the steps that recognise Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, then the government should act unilaterally, as they are legally entitled to do under Article 16 of the protocol. This is about the future of the Union, and the Minister for the Union, the Prime Minister, needs to act.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Now, after the break, Dr. Liam Fox tells us why he's backing down on the Down syndrome bill. No, that's wrong. Why he's doing the Down syndrome bill.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, we've got some more of your views that's been coming in. We've got Alan from Sidcup. Why is this issue on a back burner with the media and the government? Many people voted Conservative to prevent this happening. UK taxpayers' money being used for housing and feeding illegals in the UK is not right. We were talking before about how the country was going to get some sort of money into its coffers. What did it need to do? Grow the economy, yes, but maybe bits where it was spending unnecessarily what it shouldn't be doing. And Michael Carr there on Boris Johnson's wife. Boris should stop listening to, he said, her indoors if she's the one pulling the strings. And we've got here an explosive book has come out by a peer, a Tory peer's bombshell book, saying that Carrie is the one to blame for the number 10 chaos. Front page there.
So it's Lord Ashcroft's book. Lord Ashcroft is a prolific writer of books on political characters. He's written one on David Cameron.
Yes.
He's written one on Rishi Sunak. He's written one now on Carrie.
And he said it's like a Greek tragedy. He said, my book shows Carrie's behaviour is preventing the Prime Minister leaving Britain as effectively as the voters deserve. Now, what I don't like, if you don't mind me saying, Phil, you know, she might be a strong personality and she might have opinions. Nothing wrong with that. Every person does. But, you know, Boris needs to take, you know, some, responsibility for what's going on. Can't keep blaming everybody around him. He's the leader. So whilst I think it's interesting to read how forceful a character she is, you know, he is the leader. So I don't like it when the women sort of get the blame all the time.
No, I agree with that. I mean, as
Be
somebody,
careful what you say there, Phil.
As somebody who's married to a strong-willed woman, I think I can speak with some authority on this subject. And I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, Boris is the Prime Minister, not Carrie, and he makes the decisions. And, you know, I don't know what Carrie's views are on things. It may well be that she holds lots of views that I don't agree with, but she's not the Prime Minister, and I don't think she should be blamed, particularly. You know, she's not really in a position to be able to speak up for herself and argue back, is she? And I think it's, I think it's unfair to blame her when ultimately Boris is the Prime Minister and he should take responsibility for the decision.
So we want to hear your views on that. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Do you think the wife should cop the blame for what's going on in number 10 Downing Street? So the Winter Olympics kicked off yesterday in Beijing with a firework-filled opening ceremony and with some encouraging results already in events like curling. Team GB are setting their eyes on Olympic gold. Our reporter, Anna Riley, spoke to Team GB snowboarder Katie Ormond about her hopes for the competition and the trials she had to overcome along the way.
Team GB Olympian Katie Armarod is rearing to hit the snow in Beijing and win a title for her country. But it's been a slippery slope to get there. Just 3 days before the 2018 Winter Olympics, Katie fractured her heel training, with the injury nearly ending her career. But after 7 operations, skin grafts and a full year of arduous rehab, Katie's back in winning form, becoming the first Briton to win a World Cup snowboard title in 2020. The 24-year-old hopes that all her hard work will finally pay off for these Olympic Games.
An Olympic medal would feel amazing. It is obviously a dream of mine, but I think because of how badly Pyeongchang went and the fact that, you know, I had to overcome so much from getting over my broken heel, and it was really close to being career ending. So the fact that I'm now going into a second Olympic Games, like that to me is just the most amazing thing. And I've been working really hard over the last few years to be in a position where, you know, I can hopefully go and do well and hopefully get a medal. But I'm not really going in with that mindset. I'm just going in hoping to do the best that I can possibly do on the day. And if I do that, I can't ask for any more of myself, and hopefully a result will come with that.
Katie first learnt to snowboard when she was 5 years old and loves the freedom that flying through the air gives her. She's proud of her Yorkshire roots and how she can match herself against competitors who grew up surrounded by mountains.
So proud to be from Yorkshire, and I'm really, it's just such an amazing feeling being able to represent, my country in snowboarding, because we're not known for being like a winter sport nation, and I've had to work so hard to, get to this position now where I'm going into my second Olympic Games in a winter sport. I've had to work so much harder than the people I compete against who grew up in the mountains, and I'm really proud of that. And, I'm hoping that I can inspire a lot of other British people as well, that, you can achieve anything you want if you put your mind to it. And just because, we don't have ski resorts all over where we live, and you can still, get to the top level if you work hard at it.
While she may have been in great shape in 2018, the 2022 Games could be about to see the best version of Katie Armarod yet, with a potential medal on the horizon for this West Yorkshire snowboarder. Anna Riley, GB News.
Now, it's not just the government which can try to get legislation through Parliament. Just as well at the moment, I guess.
At certain times during the parliamentary calendar, individual MPs have the chance to introduce a private member's bill and get the opportunity to persuade their colleagues to turn a topic close to their heart into law.
This week, we're joined by Dr. Liam Fox MP, who is trying to get the Down syndrome bill through the House. Liam, thanks for joining us. Firstly, what's the bill about and why is it so important to you?
Well, the first thing is we did get it through the House yesterday. It's now passed through the House of Commons and gone to the House of Lords. The bill is designed to ensure that people with Down syndrome get access to the quality of services they need. That is in health services, it's in educational services, and in long-term care services. Why is it important now? Because people with Down syndrome now have an increased life expectancy. When I was growing up and the boy next door had Down syndrome, the life expectancy was 15 years. When I became a doctor in the 80s, that was 30 years. Today, it's 60 years. And that means that this is the first generation of people with Down syndrome who will outlive their parents. And unless we take action now, there's a perfectly predictable number of personal tragedies that will come. So one of the benefits, as you know, being a member of Parliament is actually being able to identify a problem, doing something about it.
You mentioned the age by which now Down syndrome people can live to, but was there anybody who specifically inspired you to do this bill?
Well, obviously, one of the motivations was a friend of mine in the constituency whose son has got Down syndrome. But, when I worked as a doctor, and then in all our work as MPs, we see the complexity of the issues facing people with Down syndrome. That picture is of Freddie, who is my constituency assistant, Annabelle's son. But it's typical of all the issues. I first met Annabelle when she brought Freddie to my surgery to complain about the lack of access to special education that he had. But it's more than that. It's also the complex medical needs. So parents who have children with Down syndrome, they're not only just taking on the system in terms of learning disability, but they have the sort of medical needs of high levels of congenital heart problems. They've got an increased risk of leukemia. There's a whole range of ear, nose and throat problems. And then, of course, now with the increased life expectancy, the worry is what will happen to my son or daughter when I'm not here. So if we're actually able to change the system, we can ensure that the people with Down syndrome get the independence and the choices in their own lives that the rest of us take for granted, and also that parents are relieved of this terrible burden of anxiety.
Now, I read somewhere, Liam, that there were about 42,000 people in the UK with Down syndrome and about 750 babies a year born with Down syndrome. I just wondered whether or not there was a postcode lottery around the country in terms of the level of support for people with Down syndrome. Is it the case that there's a much better services in some parts of the country than in other places?
It's not even just that it's a geographical lottery in that sense. In some places, you'll get very good healthcare or good long-term health, good long-term care, but not good educational services. And it's a mixture, and it's because good outcomes are dependent on access to all of them that we decided to alter the system. And that means that there will be new guidance issued by the various secretaries of state to health authorities, to local authorities, to education authorities. And there will be a named person in the new integrated care boards who will be responsible for implementing the contents of the Down Syndrome Bill if it becomes the Down Syndrome Act, which we hope it will be potentially in March this year. And if we do get it on the statute book by March, before International Down Syndrome Day at the end of March, we will be the only country in the world to have legislated. And I think that matters, because if you believe, as I do, in global Britain, it can't just be about warships and trade. It's also got to be about the values that we have as a country and how we treat people with conditions like Down syndrome. I think says a great deal about the values that we have as a country.
Now, who's been getting involved and who's been supporting you? I think I read Tommy Jessup, who's the star of The Line of Duty, has been supporting you on this as well.
But what's been really heartening is, yes, people like Tommy have got behind us, but all political parties have got behind us. And MPs have not just been doing what they normally do, which is turning up and saying they support the legislation, but they've been getting out there, helping to be advocates for the process. And we've had a super response from the public and on social media. And I think that it's sort of touched a chord, and I think people understand that this is a group in the population that's been, I think, overlooked for too long. People like Tommy Jessup have shown the great potential that people with Down syndrome can have, and I think we've entered a new era. So pretty much everybody's been helpful. We've had the support of the government, we've had support of all the political parties in the House of Commons, assuming we can do the same in the House of Lords, and I have no reason to doubt that we can. Then we can actually turn what was a good idea and what was a nice idea, which has now become a good idea with teeth, into a landmark bill, which I think will change how we think about disability in the country.
Liam, can I say what you're doing with this bill? As you say, it's a world's first, really is to be applauded. And as a sort of a veteran MP who's been in the cabinet with various prime ministers, it's all front page on all of the papers today, what's going on, what's happening in the cabinet. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I'm actually here at a conference in Plymouth at the moment, and I've been setting out what I think conservatism actually is, the principles of conservatism. And we spend too much on the froth of politics, we spend too much on the process of government, and we forget the purpose of government. And I think we need to get back to a more philosophical and thoughtful basis for our politics. And I think we've got to get away from our obsession with the day-to-day of what's happening in the Westminster bubble and to start to deal with the big issues. We've got a crisis in security in Ukraine. We've got rising inflation. We've got the problems of high fuel bills with global fuel costs. These are not small problems we have to deal with, and that's even before we get to getting the global economy out of the problem of the COVID pandemic. We've really got to stop becoming a one-issue country in terms of our media coverage and start getting on to talk about the issues that really affect people in our country. Of course, they're cross about the issues surrounding potential parties in Downing Street. We've got a police investigation that will give us the answers to those. Until we get those answers, we should start talking and acting on the issues that really matter to the quality of life of people in our country.
Liam Fox, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And still to come, Welsh fans plan to enjoy the Men's Six Nations Championship, even though they can't get to the game in Dublin. First, though, here's the weather.
Good morning. A windy weekend, and for For some, a wet weekend too. And in places, a wintry weekend with snow likely to continue on and off across Scotland today and tomorrow. These weather fronts are slowly trickling southwards, bringing clouds and outbreaks of rain, isobars close together, so it is blustery and it will stay that way throughout Sunday also. But back to today, and that wet weather moving into Scotland does have some snow mixed in, mostly over hills, but some for a time to low levels across the northeast. Rain for Northern Ireland, pushing into northwest England, north and west Wales, much of the Midlands, southern England, eastern England. Dry for most of the day. It will cloud over after some sunshine this morning. Eventually a bit of patchy rain drifting into the Midlands. The temperatures in the south double figures, so higher than yesterday, but it is still windy, so not feeling all that mild. And the colder air is spreading back in this afternoon to northern Scotland. So some sunny spells, but the showers will get going here. Snow showers, and they could cause some problems as they continue into Sunday. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, a couple of centimetres even at low levels, more than that on some of the hills, so certainly some of the higher routes that could cause some disruption. For England and Wales, we're going to see the rain pushing south overnight. It could be quite heavy, but it will make for a very mild night here, whereas the colder air spreads back into northern England and Northern Ireland. Some sunny spells here tomorrow, but there will be showers, wintry showers, but the heaviest snow continuing in those showers over northern and western Scotland, where that warning remains in place. A wet start tomorrow in the south. The rain may tend to peter out, and we should see some brighter spells developing, certainly across England and Wales during tomorrow afternoon, with just a few showers scattered about. Rain may well return to the southwest, however. Again, temperatures in the south double figures, further north cold, but everywhere will feel colder because it's going to stay windy. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is Saturday's selection here on GB News with me, Esther McVeigh, and Philip Davis. Coming up, we're asking what happens when a parent tries to turn their children against a former partner. We're at Chester Zoo to find out how they're helping save endangered elephants with groundbreaking vaccines. Plus, there's all the usual Saturday sport and showbiz. But first, let's get the latest news headlines.
Good morning. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. A former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was schools minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. Writing in the Daily Telegraph this morning, Mr Gibb says his constituents are furious about the double standards. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the Online Safety Bill, firms are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added, including revenge porn. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon to ruin people's lives. Over in the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the results of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr. Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory. During a speech in Florida, Mr. Pence directly challenged his former boss's assertion that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office.
President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
Former Vice President Mike Pence. Meanwhile, the US military says an airport attack in Afghanistan that left 13 American troops and 170 Afghans dead could not have been prevented. The blast happened in the capital, Kabul, last August, as US troops were helping with evacuations in the aftermath of the Taliban's takeover. It was believed to be a complex attack involving both a suicide bomber and ISIS-K gunman, but the inquiry showed there was only a single bomber. US Army Brigadier General Lance Curtis says security protocols were correctly followed.
Based upon our investigation at the tactical level, this was not preventable, and the leaders on the ground followed the proper measures. And anytime there was an imminent threat warning, they followed the proper procedures.
General Lance Curtis. Back in the UK, police in Birmingham have issued an appeal after an urn containing a child's ashes was stolen during a break-in. The urn, which police say is of little monetary value, was taken on Friday in the Garrett's Green area of the city. Officers say the ashes belong to the homeowner's first child, who was stillborn almost 10 years ago. The government has launched a public competition to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history. The winner will be announced this summer. More than 400 Roman skeletons have been found by HS2 archaeologists. Workers on the high-speed rail network discovered the remains, thought to be over 1,600 years old, near Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. 40 of them were beheaded, with their heads placed by their feet, suggesting they may have been criminals or outcasts. The Queen has been looking through presents and cards from well-wishers to mark her record-breaking Platinum Jubilee year. Tomorrow marks 70 years since Elizabeth II came to the throne. During the photo shoot, one of the Queen's dogs, Candy, decided to get in on the action. And it could be you. A UK ticket holder has won the Euromillions jackpot. Someone in Britain is sitting on nearly £110 million this morning. Organisers are urging players to check their tickets to see if it's them. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's return to Saturday Selection.
Hello, this is the Saturday Selection on GB News, live on TV, online, and of course now on DAB+ digital radio across the UK. I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis. Shortly we'll be discussing a difficult subject. What do you do when a former partner deliberately tries to cut you out of the lives of your children?
First, though, we're rejoined in the studio by Frank McKenna, the founder of Downtown in Business, to help us go through some of the top stories in today's papers. But Frank, tell us a little bit about Downtown.
Well, it's an independent private sector lobby group. We were established 20 years ago to influence, you did our first event.
You know, when you said 20 years ago, I thought, surely not 20 years ago in Liverpool that this group was founded, but yes, it was.
Part of the schoolgirls' choir. So we influence politicians at local, regional, national level to try and get them to introduce business-friendly policies, and we drive the economies of the cities where we work forward in a positive way. So we're right across the country now, all over the northwest, up to Leeds, down to Birmingham, Wolverhampton, and in this great city of London.
And it's about 1,500 businesus that you represent, and it's really getting their voice, as you say, to people in government. So now that you've told us that, tell us what you spotted in the paper and if that really focuses your attention on what you're reading in the paper, what you do in business.
Absolutely. Well, you tend to look at things from your members' point of view, and one of the big issues of the pandemic, of course, has been working from home guidelines. So there's a really interesting feature in the Daily Telegraph today, headlined "How the HR Blob Took Over the Workplace and Put the Brakes on Britain." And I think that, you know, when the guidance was initially introduced, then again, there was an appreciation. We weren't quite sure what we were dealing with. Fine. But the fear has always been that a culture would begin to creep into the workforce, that it's not something to protect them, it's something that becomes a right. So if we want to work from home, we can work from home. I think there's lots of problems with that. Firstly, there's the problem about a blue-collar, white-collar split within our society. If you're a bin man, if you're a care worker, you ain't got the choice to work from home. So there's that split. Never mind the poor buggers from Tesco have been having to work through, you know, and those the retailers have been having to work throughout the pandemic. But I think the other problem is productivity, customer service, and how do you get a culture within your business if people are sat at home in the pyjamas watching Jeremy Kyle or this fantastic news station. So for me, you know, I think we've got to try our best to have a shift back to where we were pre-pandemic so that people are encouraged to go into work. It's having an impact on cities, of course. It then has an impact on economic growth. And ultimately, it will have an impact on the individuals themselves, because if the economy is dying, then there's going to be less jobs about. So you won't be working from home. You'll be sat at home actually not being able to do anything.
One of the points I always make, Frank, is that people ought to be aware what they wish for.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, if you have a job where you think you're just going to work from home all the time, you're not then just competing for that job with people in your local area. You're competing with people all around the world. Yeah. If you're sat at home doing that job, you can the company can recruit somebody from India or the US. So people ought to be aware what they wish for. And I also think that there's a big issue for young people just starting out at work. You know, they go into the office and they learn from other people in the office, things that they, you know, just peeking over the desk and saying, you know, how do I do this? Or just listening to what other people are doing. When you're at home, you miss out on all that experience, and people don't develop and aren't able to learn in the same way.
And there's definitely a sum of the parts. I mean, when people talk about, oh, I had this, you know, great idea, inspiration, it's usually because they are brainstorming. It's a group of them around a table coming up with an idea and adding to it. But as you do represent businesses in cities, and with the footfall into cities now being smaller, are some of them saying, we want people back in the workplace? Are they saying we never want to see another lockdown again? Especially, I know you represent a lot of the hospitality sector.
Well, the hospitality industry has been absolutely battered. And although it wasn't a lockdown over Christmas, it felt like, and there were thousands of cancellations from those restaurants. So they really did suffer. And of course, what they rely upon, particularly the independents, is that footfall during the week from businesses so that they can trade. And in a city like Liverpool, which has suffered a 45% decrease on average in footfall over the past 2 years, we are seeing many businesses go to the wall simply because the trade isn't there. So cities will die. I think ultimately, though, what we will see is that shift back, because, as Philip rightly says, if you're a young person, if you're somebody of my age, You
That's
want
a young person,
people.
Frank.
But you want people into the office, don't you? Younger people to actually start to evolve your business. You get ideas from them as well as them learning from your experience. And an interesting conversation I had with a corporate company last week, where the guy said there was a bit of a pushback, but some people were desperate to get back into the office. Some people don't particularly want to be sat in a bedsit on a laptop. Those people are going into the office are finding actually we're going to progress quicker. And when the people sat at home recognise that that's going to be the case, if you're going into the office, your boss is seeing the value add to your company, then I think that's when the shift will happen. But again, the government needs to start to change that culture as well.
Now, on a different note, if Boris Johnson thinks it's unpopular, he should try and be Prince Harry. Because in The Sun on page 22, Piers Morgan, I mean, I don't know if you're a Piers Morgan fan, but Prince Harry
Is anyone?
But
Piers or Prince Harry?
Piers Morgan has really stuck the boot into Prince Harry today about all of this. It sort of said, me time. And just to give you a flavour of what he wrote, he said that Prince Harry's become a po-faced, puritanical, virtue-signalling, full of hypocritical claptrap, which has made him a ridiculous global laughingstock, and said that, I don't know what the hell has happened to Harry. I do know that his incessant rabbiting about his mental health for huge financial gain is now damaging my mental health. So, for the love of God, shut up, you privileged little twerp. I mean, nobody could have accused Piers Morgan of sitting on the fence, can they, to be perfectly fair? Are you a Harry and Meghan fan, or would you subscribe to the Piers Morgan view of Harry?
Yeah, we've heard enough.
I think I'm probably sat in between. Again, sounding like a Liberal Democrat. I'm not careful here. Again, it's about balance, isn't it? And I think that's well over the top in terms of that sort of...
But at the end of the day, when you've got sort of tens and tens of millions of pounds and you've got to constantly keep talking, you're going to have to come up with things, because they've got like podcasts and shows, and that's what they're selling, isn't it? They're selling themselves the story, and any story that they can think they can come up with. Now, I like this one. This one made me smile. And this is in the Telegraph today. There was 3 in this marriage: me, my husband, and his phone. And I think there's a lot of people who could agree with that. And Philip, you are shocking. I have to tell you, he's always on his phone. It doesn't matter, we could be out on a birthday dinner date, it doesn't matter what it is. He's doing emails to somebody. You don't do social media. It is just constantly staying in touch with emails and the latest news, the latest news. Now, Frank, don't tell me that you're not a phone addict.
Frank, can I just say before...
Defend yourself, Philip.
You've known Esther for many years.
I have.
Right? Who do you think, in all honesty, hand on heart, spends more time on the phone between us two? I mean,
remember, you've known me a long time, Frank.
Yeah, I would, again, can I plead the fifth? No, I would probably say Esther.
Exactly.
But I get told off.
Is that because I'm so popular and people are calling me? Oh, yes.
I think it's because you're nosy. But so you're always looking to catch up on things. But I think, actually, you know, it depends what time of the year it is, but I was incessantly on the phone over the past couple of weeks looking to see who Everton appointed as the new manager. Good luck, Frank Lampard, today.
And I have to say, best headline of the day has to go to the plank of England, and that's front page of the Star today. The man who's earning £575,000 a year tells the rest of us, don't ask for a pay rise. So I think that really was the wrong thing for him to say. Yes, he was caught up on, you know, inflation and what it would mean if people ask for more money, and then obviously inflation runs away with it and we've got lots of bills. But at the end of the year and the end of the day, lots of people will be needing more money to pay for all of the price increases that is coming our way.
He's just put the interest rates up as well, so
exactly
people are
right.
going to be asking for more money to pay for the mortgage rises.
Yeah. So maybe we should have a counter claim against him. Put your interest rates back down and we won't ask for a pay rise. So, Frank McKenna, thank you very much indeed for being with us
Nice to see you both.
Morning.
Thank you.
Today sees the start of the Men's Rugby Union Six Nations Championship. The opening match is in Dublin, where Wales are the visitors against Ireland. But the Welsh fans who can't get to the game are still planning to enjoy the start of the tournament.
Our Wales reporter Lily Hewitson joins us from Cardiff. Lily, what can we expect from today's game?
Yes, certainly is an exciting day for rugby fans across the UK today. Yes, the Six Nations starts. And I think when events like this come around, it really does feel like a return to normality as we come out of all of these restrictions and we can go and enjoy these games wherever they might well be in the UK. It's really an opportunity to lift our spirits. Now, of course, Wales take on Ireland in Dublin later on today in their first game of the tournament. But there are certainly some mixed reviews about the squad who are in the lineup today. Of course, we haven't got some of those very well-known experienced names that we're used to in the Wales squad. We're of course missing Alan Wynne-Jones, I don't think he's missed a Six Nations game since 2006. And we also haven't got some of the big names like Josh Navidi, George North, and of course Lee Halfpenny as well, just to name a few. And all of those players are injured, but it means some of the younger members of the squad have got an opportunity to gain a cap there. Last year, of course, Wales did win the tournament, but this year they are being branded as the underdogs in the tournament. But let's hear from Wales coach Wayne Pivac, because I think he's got some positivity to bring to the table.
It's a tournament that everyone wants to win, so we're no different. We want to go out there and each individual wants to put their best foot forward. They know that there's a lot at stake as defending champions. We worked hard to get that title last year, and we'd like to be in a position to try and do that again. So it means week one we've got to work very, very hard to get a result, and then back that up in week two. So the first two weeks of this competition are critical, but obviously we've got an eye to what's coming up in about 18 months' time, and where there are injuries and some big names missing, it's opportunities for others, and we've got a squad to pick shortly to go to a World Cup, and so that's going to help in that preparation.
So certainly good to hear some positivity from the Wales coach there, as there really are some mixed reviews about the squad in this game against Ireland later on today. Of course, it's not at home at the Principality Stadium, which is just behind me, but Wales will be taking on Scotland here at the stadium on the 12th of February, which is going to be a really welcomed experience for people here in Wales, being able to watch Wales on home soil. Of course, there was a situation where we thought they may have to play behind closed doors because of restrictions here in Wales, but the recent easing has meant that they can go ahead, we can go to the rugby clubs, go to the pub and watch the game. But before we get too carried away, let's see what happens at today's game.
Lily Hewitson, that's our reporter in Cardiff. Thank you very much indeed. Now, coming up, we tackle a difficult subject of parent versus parent. First, though, here's the weather with Alex Deacon.
Good morning. A windy weekend and for some, a wet weekend too. And in places, a wintry weekend with snow likely to continue on and off across Scotland today and tomorrow. These weather fronts are slowly trickling southwards, bringing clouds and outbreaks of rain, isobars close together, so it is blustery and it will stay that way throughout Sunday also. But back to today, and that wet weather moving into Scotland does have some snow mixed in, mostly over hills, but some for a time to low levels across the northeast. Rain for Northern Ireland, pushing into northwest England, north and west Wales, much of the Midlands, southern England, eastern England. Dry for most of the day. It will cloud over after some sunshine this morning. Eventually a bit of patchy rain drifting into the Midlands. The temperatures in the south double figures, so higher than yesterday, but it is still windy, so not feeling all that mild. And the colder air is spreading back in this afternoon to northern Scotland. So some sunny spells, but the showers will get going here. Snow showers, and they could cause some problems as they continue into Sunday. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, a couple of centimetres even at low levels, more than that on some of the hills, so certainly some of the higher routes that could cause some disruption. For England and Wales, we're going to see the rain pushing south overnight. It could be quite heavy, but it will make for a very mild night here, whereas the colder air spreads back into northern England and Northern Ireland. Some sunny spells here tomorrow, but there will be showers, wintry showers, but the heaviest snow continuing in those showers over northern and western Scotland, where that warning remains in place. A wet start tomorrow in the south. The rain may tend to peter out, and we should see some brighter spells developing, certainly across England and Wales during tomorrow afternoon, with just a few showers scattered about. Rain may well return to the southwest, however. Again, temperatures in the south double figures, further north cold, but everywhere will feel colder because it's going to stay windy. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that has been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
It's GB News, it's 11:23. Now, it's a surprisingly frequent situation. A couple breaks up, and instead of keeping things civil for the children, one partner does all they can to turn the family against the other.
Often, the safety of the kids is used as a legitimate excuse to exclude one parent from being a part of the child's lives. But in many cases, that exclusion just isn't justified.
We're joined in the studio by Jan James, founder and chief executive of Good Egg Safety and a passionate campaigner on this subject. Jan, why do you feel so strongly about this?
Thank you. You just actually said that, some parents may be, held back from seeing their children for legitimate reasons. And if that were the case, it wouldn't be called parental alienation. If a child is being held back from a parent because the other parent is known to be abusive, then that would be called estrangement, and that would be perfectly right to protect them in those circumstances. What parental alienation means, and it's been much misrepresented in the media, as you'll have probably seen, is where a parent, without any justification, will psychologically manipulate a child to reject a parent. I think, the best place to start is Kafkas, who deal with 140,000 cases annually. And their definition is basically that, when a child's resistance and hostility towards a parent is not justified because they've been psychologically manipulated. But worse than that, and this is the reason I've got involved, is that the former chair and chief exec of Kafkas, Anthony Douglas CBE, described parental alienation as a deliberate manipulation of a child by a parent, and he said that it had become so common in family breakdowns. Kafkas felt that it was 80% of their most intractable cases was as big an issue as any other form of child abuse or neglect. And that's why I've got involved.
I was going to ask that question, how common is this? And you've already answered it there. I mean, what we're saying is you're weaponising your child against your partner. That's what we're saying here, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's a form of post-separation domestic abuse where psychological abuse and coercive control is at its heart. And it's devastating for children. I mean, I've spent a lifetime campaigning to keep children safe in cars and homes. And the psychological safety of children is critical too. And we've interviewed many adults who were alienated as children. And their stories are uniquely heartbreaking. They say the same things: suicide ideation, drug and alcohol abuse.
So this is the child grown up.
That's right.
They've got all of these issues because they had a stunted relationship, as it were, or a poisonous relationship with their family.
Absolutely. They've been told repeatedly that a parent could be a mother or a father, because this is not a gendered issue, no matter how many times we're told it, they've been told that that parent is unworthy, is unfair, is dangerous, has alcohol issues or whatever, and they grow up without that loved parent in their lives. You've got to remember that parental alienation is generally where the parent had a close, loving bond before separation, and then subsequent to separation, that bond is severed, that attachment bond, not just with the parent, but also with a whole host of the family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, a whole half of their familial heritage.
So going forward, you're damaging their ability to have a relationship with somebody else. If you can't trust your nearest and dearest, and you thought they were there for you from birth, and then you can't, is this what you? So it's a cycle of abuse.
And of course, it's not just the parents, is it? Because this affects grandparents as well, and relationships with other relatives too.
It does. To answer your question, yes, absolutely, and it's transgenerational. The problem is when you abuse a child, whether it's parental alienation or other forms of domestic abuse, children either become victims themselves or perpetrators. So the cycle of abuse continues. And it isn't a surprise that many adults who were alienated as children subsequently find their own children alienated from them, because the characteristics of the partner that they choose, a life partner, subconsciously they're choosing similar characteristics to their alienating parent. And then they wonder why the cycle is, repeating. So that is a major issue.
And does this affect children of all ages, or is it particularly amongst younger children who?
You can see alienation in all ages, but what our study showed was it's particularly prevalent from the age of 7 or 8. So when the cognitive abilities become more, they're more able to be manipulated. So that's kind of the age group.
And what's the solution? I mean, do the courts not?
Oh, just a little question like that, Philip.
I mean,
$1 million question.
What can the courts or the government or what can be done to deal with this?
The solution is firstly to recognise it as the abuse it is. Let's be really clear about this. No parent would put their child's healthy needs below their own and cause them to disrupt a close, loving bond with a parent, grandparents. It's an appalling legacy to give to a child. Low self-esteem, lack of self-worth, suicide ideation. So we want government to stop it and recognise it for the abuse that it is.
So have we not wanted to call it abuse? Do we shy away from calling it abuse?
Well, we do. In fact, it's been reversed, and we're told that parental alienation is actually a means for abusive fathers to further victimise mothers. Now, of course, some may play the alienation card, but our research shows the majority are actually being alienated. We work with thousands of mothers as well as fathers, and they have been alienated by an abusive father.
And you've done that study. I was going to look at that study.
Yes, the study. So we're campaigners, social campaigners, and we work with UK and Scottish governments. So everything we do is evidence-based and everything we do is evaluated. So the first thing we did when we stepped onto this explosive societal landmine was do our homework. And we set up a survey. We hired an independent researcher to devise the questions, and we worked with our global task force. We work with leading experts in the field. Erin Pitsey, the founder of Refuge, many barristers, lawyers, leading child psychologists. And we put the questions on our fairly safe child seats site, Facebook page. We were inundated. We had over 2,000 responses, 1,500 from the UK, 43% from mothers, which tells us clearly it's not a gendered issue. And actually, the figures were horrendous. Almost half the respondents hadn't seen their children for more than 6 months. 1 in 10 hadn't seen their children for more than 5 years. And I ask viewers to just imagine, if you have children, what that must feel like for you. And if we want to call it a different term, let's call it what it is. It's domestic abuse by proxy using the child, and it's also child abduction, because it doesn't matter if that child is thousands of miles away or around the corner. You cannot get to see them. The police won't get involved because they regard it as a civil matter. So you go to court, you get a child arrangements order made in the child's best interests, breached with impunity. You then go back to get an enforcement order, and 90%, less than 90%, are actually enforced. So parents have nowhere to go, and they are basically re-victimised. They are told that they are not suffering, that parental alienation is not an issue, yet Kafkas had said it was 80% of their most intractable cases. So we need it to be addressed.
And the government have recognised now parental alienation in the domestic abuse bill by putting it in the guidance, saying it's part of controlling and coercive behaviour. So
yes,
I'm sure that must be a good step forward.
Thanks to you, and also Baroness Mayer and a number of other brave souls that stood up in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Yes, and we hope that it's retained in the guidance notes. It's still being debated, but it's still there despite an onslaught of misinformation, because it absolutely unequivocally is domestic abuse. And I had the opportunity to ask the policy campaigns manager for Women's Aid which element of the alienating behaviours that's currently in there, repeatedly denigrating, demeaning, obstructing contact, destroying mementos, creating financial hardship, which of those were not abusive? And her answer was, it comes under coercive control. So Women's Aid themselves have admitted that this is coercively controlling behaviour. The reason we want these to be identified, as the Act is meant to be, to help victims identify, it was a declared aim by government, is that many parents don't know what it is. And by the time they know what's happening to them, it's too late.
Jan James, thank you so much for coming in and explaining it as clearly as you have. And I'm quite sure there's quite a few viewers, isn't there?
Yes,
who might...
Good to hear people's views.
Yeah.
GBviews at gbnews.uk. If anybody's been affected themselves by parental alienation, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Still to come on Saturday Selection, we'll be taking a look at all of the weekend sport. But first, here's the news headlines.
It's 33 minutes past 11. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. Former Schools Minister Nick Gibb has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. He's joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign after allegations of lockdown parties at Downing Street. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Social media firms will now be forced to actively remove illegal content without waiting for it to be reported by users. Under the Online Safety Bill, companies are required to remove a range of illegal material, but now several new criminal offences are being added, including revenge porn. Culture Secretary Nadine Tories says the government hopes the bill will bring the full weight of the law against those who use the internet as a weapon. In the US, the former Vice President Mike Pence says he could not have changed the results of the 2020 presidential election. It follows renewed claims by Donald Trump that Mr. Pence could have overturned the Democrats' victory and that he should be investigated for failing to prevent Joe Biden taking office. A competition has been launched to find the new home of the railways. The winning town or city, which has to be outside London, will house the new Great British Railways headquarters. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says it should be somewhere well connected with a great railway history. The winner will be announced this summer. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Saturday Selection.
It's GB News, it's 11:35. It's time to look ahead to a big weekend of sport, including the start of the Six Nations and the FA Cup fourth round, and there's already been a giant killing.
Yes, sports writer and broadcaster Aidan McGee joins us in the studio. So, Aidan, what did you make of that Manchester United exit on the penalties last night?
Before Philip said giant killing, I think when it's a side one division below, we probably call it a mini giant killing. But nonetheless, it's still a team from the Championship overturning or turning over a side from the Premier League. It was quite difficult for Man United to accept because it probably means that their pursuit of silverware now this season is over. That would be 5 years now. I mean, look, we assume they're not going to win the Champions League. They're quite far back in the Premier League as well, but they're out of the two domestic competitions. So it'll be 5 years now since they won a trophy. I mean, that hasn't happened since long before Sir Alex Ferguson. It didn't even happen under Ron Atkinson. You're going back to the 70s here before that happened.
We watched this match.
Exactly.
We watched the match. I watched the match last night. Esther just
joined for the penalty shootout. I love penalty shootouts. Don't need to watch the other rubbish.
I can just 11:23. I think the actual.
Yeah, we're late.
Well, I mean, the game had everything, didn't it? Ronaldo missed a penalty, VAR.
Yeah, I mean, the VAR thing was controversial because the rules actually changed last summer. So everyone thought that the Middlesbrough midfielder Duncan Watmore handled the ball, so they can't be allowed. And Matt Crooks was celebrating scoring the goal, and I thought, he's being a bit overzealous with his celebrations here. This is going to be chalked off as a matter of formality. And it was given. And there was an adaptation or amendment made to the rule last summer saying that if the next movement from after the handball didn't result in a goal, i.e. another player came in and put it in, then the goal stands, which, looking back at it, probably makes a bit of sense, although Lee Dixon was on the co-coms last night on ITV and said, look, it was still a handball at a crucial point in the move, and therefore the goal shouldn't have stood. But nonetheless, it went to 8-7 in penalties. Anthony Elanga was the player he was the full guy who shot the ball over the bar.
And all of the penalties were amazing.
They were.
All of them were amazing.
Yeah,
something had to give.
Anyway, I'm talking about the FA Cup. One man with mixed feelings about one of today's FA Cup ties is the business minister and Chelsea and Fulham MP Greg Hands. Chelsea's Stamford Bridge ground is in Greg's constituency, but he's a Plymouth Argyle fan, and the pair meet in the Cup this lunchtime. Greg, I think you're on your way to the ground. Firstly, how on earth does the MP for Chelsea and Fulham end up supporting the mighty Pilgrims?
Well, thanks, Phil. That's a very good question. You know, I'm spoiled for choice being MP for Chelsea and Fulham, but I've been a Plymouth Argyle fan since my parents first moved to the UK in 1973, and we moved to Lewes in Cornwall from New York, which was a bit of a culture shock, I could tell you, in 1973. But that's how I became a Plymouth Argyle fan. I've been a fan now since, almost 50 years.
So you're going to the match. The big question, I guess, is, are you in the Plymouth Argyle end, or are you with the Chelsea supporters?
Well, actually, it's much easier. It's very hard to get a ticket for the Plymouth Argyle end. They sold out pretty fast. So I'm actually going to be in the Chelsea end. I guess you could say I can't lose, but I'm very much supporting Plymouth today. I think it'd be fantastic to see another great cup run from Argyle. Plymouth is the biggest city in England that's never been in the top flight of football. It's a really well-supported club when you think about the catchment area of the whole of Cornwall, the west half of Devon. We're in the semi-final in 1984, 85, 84, I think, as a third flight club, and we're in a third flight club. We're in the third flight at the moment, League One. So, hoping for a repeat of Plymouth having a fantastic cup run. But you know, if Chelsea wins, I can at least feel constituency-wise, I've done all right.
Well, can I give you a bit of electoral advice here, Greg? And that is, if Plymouth score, don't start cheering in the Chelsea end. That's my because that comes at the end of your political career in a one fell swoop.
And you see, Greg, you're smiling there, thinking, absolutely, I won't do that. If Plymouth score, I won't jump up and cheer. And let me tell you, I was given tickets for a Man U Liverpool game. Obviously, I support Liverpool, but I got them the Man U end through a friend. All told me not to cheer. I said, OK, it was coming up to half time. I did everything wrong. I sent my dad off to be at the top of the queue to get us a cup of coffee first. So he went to the top of the queue. A goal was scored. He missed the goal, and I stood up and cheered. So everything went wrong. So I was cheering in the Man U side. So you think that you'll be able to control your excitement. You might not. We'll be reading about you. I know we will. Jumping up in the Chelsea end.
So, Greg, I saw with the bookmakers that Plymouth were 22-1 to win in 90 minutes today. So how do you rate the chances of a cup upset at Stamford Bridge today?
I think Plymouth should get much better odds than that. I mean, sort of much tighter odds. I think 22-1 is a great buy. You know, Plymouth are doing well. We didn't have a very good January. We're 7th or 8th, to the one place outside the playoff spots in League One. We've got a new, very inexperienced manager, Steve Schumacher, but I think it's a good side. And Chelsea have got to jet off, if I understand, straight afterwards to Abu Dhabi for this the World Club Championship is called these days. I'm not sure Chelsea's minds will be fully on the game. We'll see. So I would think that's a good buy at 22-1.
Greg, Hans, thank you very much for joining us and enjoy the match. And I should say I'm a Bradford City fan, and it wasn't that long ago since we caused a massive cup upset at Stamford Bridge. So there's hope for everybody. So good luck to Plymouth.
Be years and years before it happens again, Phil, on their performance at the moment.
Absolutely.
2015, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. Big 4-2. Living on past glories.
I want to know about the Olympics. I want to move on.
All the Six Nations.
Yeah. All the Six Nations.
Big sport. It's a big sporting weekend.
It is, yeah. What do you want to go first?
Go on, Six Nations.
Yeah, look, this is the wide open competition, the widest open competition we've seen in quite a long time. I'd say out of the Six Nations, only Italy can really be discounted. They're the ones who just aren't at the level of the rest. But I mean, you can make a really plausible case for all 5 of the other teams having a chance of getting their hands on the trophy. Now, England-Scotland today, I think it's 4:45. 4:45 at Murrayfield. The dynamics would be different if it was at Twickenham, but it is at Murrayfield. Scotland are in much better shape than they have been in any previous year. In fact, there's a degree of pressure there because they've got some really talented players, and a lot of their supporters, their long-held supporters, believe that with the players at their prime, this is probably the time when they have to deliver. And bear in mind that the previous 20 years have been a wretched spell for Scotland in this competition. They've finished in the bottom 2 places in 12 of those occasions. They've won the wooden spoon 4 times as well. But fast forward now, we're living in the now. 6 out of the last 10 Six Nations matches that Scotland have been involved in, they've won. They'll never have a better chance of beating. And in fact, I'd place them as favourites today at Murrayfield. No question.
There's low expectations for England this year, isn't there?
Yeah, I'd say low expectations. Yeah, they've got a few injuries, major injuries, but some would say that the removal of the captain, Owen Farrell, due to injury, might give them a few more options, might force them to play a more expansive style of rugby. You've got Marcus Smith there from Harlequins. George Ford as well is the informed fly half as well for his club. So I think that there's a lot of things to grasp hold of if you're an England fan. But I just think the task today looks very difficult. Murrayfield in February, always a tough task. But if you look elsewhere in the Six Nations, you'd have to fancy France overall. They've not won it in 2010. To coin a phrase, they've been something of bottlers in this competition, but they want to showcase their talent ahead of the World Cup, which is going to be in France next year. So they've got loads and loads of decent players. Antoine Dupont sort of leads the group on that, and I think the fixtures fall nicely for them as well.
We've hardly got any time left, but anything. Brief bit of info on the Olympics.
Yeah, well, we were talking politics. You can tell it's the Olympics because we're talking politics all the time. It's geopolitics. Just a slight. I think we were running a package this morning about Katie Ormerod and the snowboarding. She hasn't made the final, which is quite sad actually, because although there's more to come, there are more events for her to compete in. She broke her foot her heel was broken in 2 places, or it's cut in half or something like that in training for Pyeongchang 4 years ago. So this was meant to be it's going to be her first event. It hasn't gone well this morning. She doesn't qualify for the final, but there should be more to come from her.
Aidan McGee, thank you very much indeed. Now, after the break, we'll be finding out about a groundbreaking vaccine that protects endangered Asian elephants.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is Saturday Selection. It's 11:46.
Chester Zoo was in the news this week after scientists at the zoo and the University of Surrey developed a groundbreaking vaccine which could help save endangered Asian elephants from a deadly disease.
A pilot study is now underway, and we're delighted to be joined by the Chief Executive of Chester Zoo, Jamie Christen. Jamie, can you explain what's so special about this vaccine and what will it do to protect elephants?
Well, it's the first in the world. We've been developing this vaccine for nearly a decade now, working with University of Surrey, working with other conservation charities within the UK, and basically what it does, it will hopefully protect Asian elephants against EEHV, or elephant herpes, which is a deadly disease killing elephants both in zoos in the UK and abroad, and also in the wild as well. And we've seen cases in Myanmar, Thailand, India on the increase over the last few years, and hopefully this vaccine that we've developed and the £250,000 we've put towards it over the last few years will mean that we can eventually wipe out this horrible disease.
And Jamie, you know, other parts of America was trying to do this, Europe was trying to do it, but it was Chester Zoo and Surrey University that's managed to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's been a long slog to get to where we are, and you know, we've been working extremely hard, both the team here at Chester and also our colleagues at the University of Surrey and other zoos within the UK to get where we are. So yeah, we are the first. It's early days, and we've yet to try the vaccine on an elephant that does have is ill with elephant herpes, but we have been trialling it on our own herd of elephants here at Chester, and so far so good.
Jamie, I thought people probably sick of hearing about vaccinations, to be perfectly honest. But this is one where everyone might agree about vaccinations. I suppose the question that everyone will be wanting to know is this vaccination going to be mandatory as well for our elephants?
Well, you know, we will make sure, as we always do, you know, our vet team and our conservationists here at Chester Zoo look after our elephants so well and care for them, that we will we monitor them basically on a daily basis. So any signs of this horrible disease, we will make sure that the vaccine's used straight away.
And Chester Zoo, it is a wonderful visitor attraction, the biggest outside London, 2 million visitors a year, 1,000 staff. And so what is it that brings so many people to Chester Zoo?
I think our reputation, you know, we've been operating now for 90 years. We celebrated our 90th birthday last year. We are a large institution. We're well respected both in conservation and education. We attract nearly 200,000 school children to the zoo every year to come and learn about conservation. And we work in many fields across the world as well. And, you know, our mission is preventing extinction, and that's exactly what we do. We've just, over the last few weeks, shipped 39,000 snails back to Bermuda, which were extinct in the wild in Bermuda. We've bred them here at Chester Zoo over the last few years, and we've put them back into their natural habitat. That's exactly what we're about here at Chester, and that's what we'll continue to do in the future.
Now, I was reading that the first animal at Chester Zoo, I don't know if this is true, you'll be able to confirm, it was actually a polar bear back in the 1930s. So I was wondering, what are the most popular animals today with your visitors?
Well, it wasn't actually a polar bear. George Mottershead, our founder, he bought a house within the grounds here at Chester Zoo, and many of the animals actually lived within the house with him over the first few years. There was parrots, there was bears, there was an aquarium down in the cellar, and that's how he develops the 128 acres of charity zoo that we are today. Most popular animals, probably some of the large iconic species that we have at Chester. So our elephant herd, the highway family, are extremely popular here at Chester Zoo. We also look after the largest collection of black rhinos in the UK and in Europe here at Chester. We also have a group of tigers, Asiatic lions. All the animals here, all the 500 odd species that we have here at Chester Zoo are here for a particular conservation reason, be it breeding, be it research, be it that we're trying to bring them back and translocate them back into the wild in the future. But 20,000 animals here at Chester Zoo. It's a great place to come and visit. It's a great place to learn about conservation and education.
It certainly is, Jamie. And you can have breakfast with the lions and you can do a giraffe experience. Obviously, you're safe. You're safe away from the lions, but you're part of it. You can have an experience. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Jamie, Chief Executive there of Chester Zoo, for joining us this morning and telling us all about your research to save the Asian elephant.
And the weather looks great as well, doesn't it? So,
it certainly does behind him. And it's time for now our regular look at the week's top celebrity stories with the help of our showbiz reporter, Hayley Palmer. Hayley, let's start with the BAFTA nominations.
Oh, yes. OK. Well, that wasn't what I was expecting, but we're going to go into the BAFTAs. So, yes, it was reported this week about the BAFTA nominations. Some brilliant things lined up. Of course, James Bond, Daniel Craig is up for one. Surely he's got to get one. He deserves it after 10 years. And Lady Gaga as well. She is up for one, so that's exciting.
Is this how you get yourself a BAFTA, by saying this is my last film? Is that if you say, like Daniel Craig, this is my last film, so please give me a BAFTA? Is it sort of like pleading for one, isn't it, really?
Well, I think it's, it is so, such a great thing, such a great achievement, isn't it? So, yes. But I did want to come on and talk about Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
Obviously, it's a very sensitive subject. As you know, she co-hosts a talk show called The View, which she has done for the last 15 years. It goes out to millions of people every day, and her comments were very hurtful and confusing. There was so much backlash on Twitter. She did go onto Stephen Colbert's late night talk show. It kind of backfired on her. And then she went onto Twitter and she did make a heartfelt apology on there. So obviously it's been a big thing this week. What do you think about that, Esther?
I think you've got to be very careful now what you say. And there's certain topics that for some people are incredibly sensitive, and you've probably got to make sure you've got the language right and the words right. I know people say, well, maybe you shouldn't, maybe you should be able to say what you're thinking and feeling, but if you do, then you've got to appreciate there is a backlash. There was other Twitter accounts supporting her, saying she was confused, this could be why, it is a difficult subject, but will it damage her career going forward? Is this it, or can she come back?
Well, she's been suspended for 2 weeks, so she hasn't been sacked, suspended. I do know that the ABC president had said, I'm suspending Whoopi Goldberg for 2 weeks for her wrong and hurtful comments. While Whoopi has apologised, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. So, yes, she will be suspended for 2 weeks, reportedly losing $192,000. So I know she is very upset about the whole situation, of course.
I mean, what she said was clearly was clearly wrong, wasn't it? I mean, it's not really. It wasn't. I mean, you can say, well, she's entitled to opinion. It wasn't really an opinion. She was stating something that was clearly not true. So, I think it's going to be difficult for people. Are people going to want to take her on again? It might be suspended for 2 weeks on ABC, but will other people want to give her jobs? That's the question. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's career-ending for her. She's very well loved. She's done some amazing things, but obviously these comments were very shocking and surprising. I found it quite surprising. So, yes. But moving forward, Rihanna is expecting her first child with A$AP Rocky. They started dating in 2020 after years of friendship. It's really good to see her happy. she's, I think she's been through some things, and now it's really good to see her happy, and they've both expressed that they would love to both have children. So
and to see a bump.
Yes, have you seen the
We've seen
pictures?
her happy. We've seen a bump as well, haven't we? Yes, absolutely.
Lots of people said they liked the bump, they didn't like the jacket. So that's Hayley. I know we're coming to the end of the programme. We're clattering out, and there was a couple of comments we wanted to get in because we were talking about parental alienation, and some people have called in with their emotional sort of comments. And if we've only got time for the names.
Yes, I mean, Elizabeth Williams wrote, I'm so grateful that you have covered the subject of parental alienation. My son's ex-partner is using this towards him through their children. It clearly is having a damaging emotional effect on the eldest child, who's 8. Just one example of many. She cries and doesn't know why when asked, and which is now stopping her from staying with her dad. When my son queries this, his ex just laughs. I feel helpless, and my son is struggling to know what to do.
Well, thank you so much for your comments. Hayley Palmer, thank you so much for coming in and doing showbiz. We're back next week, but now it's time for Alistair and Friends.
Good morning. A windy weekend, and for some, a wet weekend too. And in places, a wintry weekend with snow likely to continue on and off across Scotland today and tomorrow. These weather fronts are slowly trickling southwards, bringing clouds and outbreaks of rain, isobars close together, so it is blustery, and it will stay that way throughout Sunday also. But back to today, and that wet weather moving into Scotland does have some snow mixed in, mostly over hills, but some for a time to low levels across the northeast. Rain for Northern Ireland, pushing into northwest England, north and west Wales, much of the Midlands, southern England, eastern England. Dry for most of the day. It will cloud over after some sunshine this morning. Eventually a bit of patchy rain drifting into the Midlands. The temperatures in the south double figures, so higher than yesterday, but it is still windy, so not feeling all that mild. And the colder air is spreading back in this afternoon to northern Scotland. So some sunny spells, but the showers will get going here. Snow showers, and they could cause some problems as they continue into Sunday. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place, a couple of centimetres even at low levels, more than that on some of the hills, so certainly some of the higher routes that could cause some disruption. For England and Wales, we're going to see the rain pushing south overnight. It could be quite heavy, but it will make for a very mild night here, whereas the colder air spreads back into northern England and Northern Ireland. Some sunny spells here tomorrow, but there will be showers, wintry showers, but the heaviest snow continuing in those showers over northern and western Scotland, where that warning remains in place. A wet start tomorrow in the south. The rain may tend to peter out, and we should see some brighter spells developing, certainly across England and Wales during tomorrow afternoon, with just a few showers scattered about. Rain may well return to the southwest, however. Again, temperatures in the south double figures, further north cold, but everywhere will feel colder because it's going to stay windy. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions